What is going on, snooker fans? Welcome back to this Snooker Digest episode. Now, I'm slightly late with this video, but I am here to do a quick review of last week's German Masters. One of the biggest tournaments in snooker, definitely arguably one of the biggest and certainly the most popular tournaments outside of the UK. And it was a week that was really good for the players that we haven't seen too much of this season, with the exception of Ali Carter and of course Judd Trump, who've continued their impressive seasons. It really was a chance for players lower down the rankings or some of the bigger guns who have been struggling recently, just to pick up a few results. The likes of Mark Selby, Mark Williams, Luca Purcell, Sean Murphy, they all exited the tournament pretty early. And it opened up the draw a little bit more. And of course, O'Sullivan pulled out a couple of days before the tournament with health issues. And some players really exploited that. Ryan Day, he reached the quarterfinals, obviously a 3-time ranking event winner. And I think this is his first time past the last 32 of any tournament this season. Sam Craigie, really impressive tournament for him. His first career ranking event semi-final. Obviously, he's been about for a few years now. I think he made his debut around 2016, 2017. So we've known a lot about him. We know he's a pretty solid player. And it came together for him last week. Got a really good result against Ali Carter in the quarterfinals. And unfortunately for him, he just ran into Judd Trump, who, if truth be told, Sam Craigie didn't really perform in that semi-final. And I'm sure he'll be slightly disappointed with that. But all in all, a fantastic week for him. And then you had Zijui as well, reached the final. And what was most impressive about the run last week for him was the fact that semi-final loss at the World Championship last year would have been so unbelievably painful. I don't think we'll probably ever see a player be 14-5 up in a snooker match again and end up losing it. Just one of the most remarkable comebacks I've ever seen from Luca Purcell in that match. And there would have been pressure on him this season because not only did he sort of announce himself to the snooker world with that performance at the World Championship, beating the likes of Sean Murphy and Anthony McGill to get to the semis. He also would have had that baggage from such a sort of awful loss hanging over him. And similar to Ryan Day, he hadn't been past the last 32 of a tournament other than getting to the quarterfinals of the shootout. But it's kind of loose whether you count performances as in a shootout or not. I personally don't. So if you take that aside, it's been a fairly subdued season for him until this week. Massive performances from him. Really, really impressive, particularly in the semi-finals. That win against Kyle Wilson, who was starting to perform as well, was huge. And look, again, similar to Craigie, his performance in the final certainly wasn't as good as his performances to get to that point. But it was his first ever final, so I think we can cut him a little bit of slack there. And yeah, just more importantly, really encouraging to see that, I think people would start looking at it and saying, oh, it was just a one-time thing, that performance at the World Championships last season. Clearly it wasn't, because he's backed it up less than a year later, getting to his first final. And yeah, encouraging to see, very exciting player, and it'll be interesting to see where he goes from here. But also, it wasn't just a tournament for the complete underdogs. Like I said, there's been players that haven't been performing too well this season. One of those is Kyle Wilson, and I've got to be honest, that since the turn of the year, I've been really impressed. I kind of wrote him completely off in my Masters preview when I was predicting his match against Judd Trump. But truth be told, Kyron was really good in that match and probably should have won it. He was one shot basically away from the quarterfinals. And then, he's left a gap. Judd's made a remarkable clearance and he's knocked out. But all in all, I thought it was a really good performance from him. And then he's backed it up this week by getting to his first semi-final of the season. And I think the best thing from Kyle Wilson's point of view is the timing of this. There were signs at the Masters, there's signs this week. Okay, he'll be disappointed to have lost a semi-final, which he probably would have backed himself to win when he had all the experience. But yeah, more importantly, his form's back, his game's looking good. And the timing of it is, we're only sort of, 2.5 months away from the World Championship. And the World Championship is a tournament that he regularly plays well in. He seems to sort of always get deep into the second week. Okay, he's not won it before, but you kind of feel like he's got the type of game that seems tailor-made to deal with the crucible, kind of like Mark Selby in a little way. And yeah, if you're looking at timing, he could be timing a return to form perfectly to maybe mount a bit of a challenge at the World Championships this spring. And as well as Kyron, Neil Robertson finally had a semi-decent tournament. I made a whole video last week about Neil's troubles this season and what he needs to do to be a guaranteed seed for the World Championship this spring. And it has to be said, this was easily his most promising tournament that I've seen for quite a while. His scoring was returning. He looks far more solid in his long game. And just all in all, concentration-wise, he looks on it. And Neil's on it when he sort of puffs his chest out and he's sort of stomping around the table. And this was the first time that he had won 3 matches in the same tournament since 2022. Unfortunately for him, the real acid test of last week was playing a fellow top 16 player, which he did when he met Kyle Wilson in the last 16. And that was the match which caught him out. And ultimately, as positive as last week was, just getting to the last 16 of a tournament won't cut it. He has a concerningly limited amount of time and tournaments left to pick up the points he needs to stay in the top 16. So I don't think his run last week done any dent into his rise up the rankings. But what it does is it gives me a little bit of confidence, and it should give him some confidence that his game, you don't lose it. A player like Neil, you don't just lose your talent overnight. He's still got it. He's got the Welsh Open next week. If he wins that, he can be in the Players' Championship, and then suddenly it's hunky-dory again. But yeah, certainly promising, but a lot of work still to be done for him as well. But again, this week only belongs to one man, and was there really any doubt about how this tournament was going to end? Look, Judd Trump, 7 finals this season by winning it. That was his 4th title of the season, his 3rd German Masters title after winning it in 2020 and 2021. By just getting to the quarterfinals of the tournament, he also won the European Series, so a nice little bonus there as well. And I didn't manage to see a whole lot of the tournament, but most of the matches that I did watch did involve Judd. And watching him, he just always seemed to be sort of in cruise control in every single match, just like level 3rd, 4th gear. And then whenever there was sort of a hint of danger, he found an extra gear just when he needed to. I think to sort of demonstrate that, if you look at the final, C got back to 5-4 early in the evening session. And then Judd just upped it immediately. I think he made 2 tons back-to-back and an 80 break to put himself 8-4 ahead. And then suddenly the match just looks out of reach. And he done that a lot. I saw his match against Tepcheva and New as well, and he was amazing to go 4-0 up. Tepe won 2 in a row to sort of maybe suggest there could be a comeback. And Judd just shut that down, made a century, won the match. And it's just incredible. He's kind of got this aura this season, like he did a few years ago when he was having a similar season. And it's an aura that's a little bit reminiscent of O'Sullivan, where you just watch him and you just expect him to beat pretty much everyone. As soon as he's playing anyone that's not ranked inside of the top 5 or 6, you just fancy him. He played John Higgins, and even though he was 2-1 down early doors, you just fancied him to get the win. And that's what it's been like watching Judd all season. He's been an absolute delight to watch. It's amazing to see. And he's also got a little bit of a side quest as well in terms of centuries. He had a really good week. I think he made 9 tons last week in Germany. So that takes his tally for the season up to 66. And he's also up to 966 centuries for his entire career. Only 34 more needed to add a couple of very impressive records to his CV. And with the time that's left, and also at the end of the season, there's going to be a lot of multi-session matches. He's guaranteed to be at the Tour Championship. That's 2 session matches all the way through. And then obviously the World Championship, you're looking at 2 sessions, 3 sessions, potentially 4 sessions, depending on how far he gets. So I would back him very strongly to get both of those records and to do it at the Crucible as well. So yeah, there we have it. Despite those players I mentioned earlier having really, really good tournaments, the trophy ultimately goes home again with that man on your screen, the main man. The tour is back next week for the Welsh Open, which is one of the longest serving tournaments on the calendar. I read earlier that Judd's actually pulled out. He's probably tired of carrying just so much silverware around with him. So unless O'Sullivan wins it, which at the moment, unless he pulls out as well, seems very likely, there will be a chance for anyone else, to have themselves quite a big week. But yeah, as always, let me know in the comments what you thought about last week's German Masters, who you're backing for next week in Wales, and I'll catch up with you, as always, the tournament after to review it. Cheers.